Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen Kingcast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I will review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication, and today I am here to talk about the concluding episodes 7 and 8 of It, Welcome to Derry. But first, I wanted to say happy holidays, everybody. This should be dropping right around the 24th or the 25th. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you for listening throughout the years. If you are a new listener, welcome aboard the Stephen King cast. I hope in the year 2026 to get back up and running more with the frequency that the earlier days of the podcast had been known for. So let's keep our fingers crossed and dream up that holiday wish, that New Year resolution that I will make time to carve out the time to get back. Things, as we know in the world of Stephen King, it all goes round again. Ka is a wheel, it all goes round again, and I would like the frequency to get back up there. So part of that is also in engagement and listener engagement. So that means follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, write in at any time you have any thoughts on anything related to Stephen King, whether it's a movie that I have reviewed, whether it's any book that you love, or any aspect of a critique that I might have given that you disagree with, any TV show that might happen to be out, any requests that you might have, anything related to Stephen King and or the Stephen Kingcast, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Like DM. DM writes in regards to It, Welcome to Derry. I agree with you that this show answers too many questions I didn't ask. I don't need to know why it can't leave Derry. It can leave Derry, it just has no need to, as it created it in its image and its private little feeding ground. I don't need to know how Pennywise was a real clown that inspired it. I prefer the creepy mystery of Pennywise being this haunting figure that has been stalking the streets of Derry since at least the 1700s. Plus, taking into account the book establishing it pulls images from the minds of its victims and projects them back at them, and telling us when it appears in the same shape for different people, they look different to each of them. That means that Pennywise looks like a different clown to different people based on their idea of a clown. So it can't be based on one. This is backed up by Pennywise looking different at various points throughout the book. Red hair and resembling Bozo to Georgie in Chapter 1. Orange hair and not looking like Bozo at all in Chapter 2. All of this just adds too much stories to the show, making them all feel rushed, undercooked, and at points glossed over. That said, I liked how they filmed the burning of the black spot. That was intense. I also liked the nod to the novel with the masks all being shapes it takes in the book Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein. But then the second half of the episode was a letdown because the military plot is just so goofily stupid. Unleashing Pennywise onto the U.S. to create 27 years of national peace and quiet after every cycle. What? I don't even know how this works. Both the novel and Chapter 1 establish that, even outside of the cycle, there is more violence and disappearances in Derry. A simple look at this data should inform General Shaw of this. And why does the shard need to be melted? Wouldn't you just want to keep it in case of a backup? I think you hit the nail on the head in the first podcast that this show is not for people who know the book's mythology too well. The general public seems to eat all of this up simply because it features Pennywise. So thank you, DM, for writing back in. I'm going to get more into the black spot and some of these thoughts. But I really am interested in hearing your thoughts, everyone that is listening, on It, Welcome to Derry, now that it has concluded. And where it's going to take us in the next season, which I assume is going to happen because of the success of this first season. At the time of this recording, just so everyone knows, if you're listening to this 3 years from now, at the time of this recording, Warner Brothers, which owns HBO, Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns HBO, is currently up for sale. So no one knows what the future of the properties within this particular studio it's going to look like. I don't know. But chances are that this is a very hot commodity, and whoever winds up buying it, whether it's Netflix or Skydance, that they will continue mining this IP, which, based on the success of this, looks like they probably will just continue the story as left off in season 2. But if you have any thoughts, questions, or there's anything that you would like to add for these general thoughts on it, Welcome to Derry, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Also, if you have time, head on over to iTunes and leave a review. That would be greatly appreciated. To help differentiate this show from other Stephen King podcasts, which you should also listen to. All right, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get into episodes 7 and 8. But first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the Wikipedia of each episode, then get into the thoughts on that episode, and leave the bigger thoughts after my minor thoughts on episode 8. So, from Wikipedia. Episode 7. In 1908, Bob Gray performs as Pennywise the Dancing Clown at a carnival. His daughter Ingrid aspires to become a clown, so Bob grants her her mother's stage name, Periwinkle. That night, it emerges from the woods disguised as a child, approaches Bob, and asks for help to find his parents. Bob reluctantly accompanies him, but he never returns. In 1962, Clint Bowers and his mob confront the guests at the Black Spot, demanding the surrender of Hank. Although Hank offers to give himself up, the presence of armed patrons force the gang to retreat. In retaliation, the gang torches the club, shooting those attempting to flee the inferno. Amidst the chaos, Dick Halloran uses his abilities to commune with the spirit of a tribal chief, revealing a secret escape route. He guides Hank, Will, and Ronnie to safety, narrowly evading Pennywise, who is already feeding on the dying patrons. Others are less fortunate, unable to escape. Rich locks Marge in a refrigerator to shield her from the flames, confessing their love moments before he succumbs to the fire. Meanwhile, Stan Kirsch, Ingrid's husband and a member of the mob, is stranded when his car breaks down. Ingrid arrives in costume, believing she has found her father, but Pennywise appears and beheads Stan. The entity taunts Ingrid, revealing it is not her father before opening its jaws to expose her to the deadlights. Sated, Pennywise departs to slumber. By dawn, the massacre is covered up as an electrical fire and blamed on the patrons. As firefighters and paramedics tend to the survivors, Charlotte helps a presumed dead Hank arrange new identity papers. Local indigenous elders confirm that the entity has consumed enough souls to begin its hibernation, destined to return in 27 years. Simultaneously, the military seizes control of the investigation. Halloran, now haunted by the ghosts, reveals to Leroy and Fuller that although he lost track of Pennywise, he has located a ritual pillar. The military recovers the artifact. Fuller announces a sudden protocol shift. With the entity dormant, they are ordered to study this pillar to locate the remaining 12, rather than attempting an immediate extraction. At the base, the deception unravels. Leroy discovers the pillar is being prepped for the incinerator, a direct violation of the study orders. He draws a gun to halt the destruction, but Shaw intervenes, exposing the operation's true nature. The plan was never to weaponize the entity against foreign enemies, but to destroy the pillars and break the containment. Shaw intends to unleash Pennywise onto the wider United States, believing the ensuing nationwide terror will shock the country into forced unity. Overpowered, Leroy watches the pillar burn as Shaw orders his detention to prevent him from leaving the base. Will receives a call from a grieving Ronnie, but the voice distorts into Pennywise's growl. Will defiantly declares he is not afraid, but Pennywise appears instantly, engulfing him in the deadlights. Okay, and so here are some thoughts on this particular episode. So the first that struck me when I was watching The Black Spot was that it's hard to watch this scene, the fire at the Black Spot, in the wake of Sinners having come out earlier this year. And by which I mean is that is a scene and that is a movie that revolves around the creation of a juke joint that is then besieged by racists, and this supposed place that is supposed to be a safe haven is under threat with a supernatural entity being a part of this invading force. So it's very similar in nature, and it's just purely coincidental. But Sinners being what it is an absolute masterpiece. I could not help but uh, keep thinking about that when this scene was playing out, which is unfortunate for this because I think that this was as well done as it could possibly have been done for the television. So when the fire starts at the black spot and the patrons realize that they can't get out and attempts to get out result with them being shot through the walls and the windows, it really does become a harrowing sequence. It's actually interesting because it's filmed in that way less like a horror movie, and it's filmed more like a war movie, and you're following the kids around as they're trying to navigate the maze and the falling bodies and the fire, and it's presented with that stark immediacy, and you're just confronted with the reality of these people being shot and falling all around them. Very matter of factly might be the wrong turn of phrase, but I think that you're trying to see what I'm saying there. And it's just the chaos and the confusion is conveyed very well within this scene as the reality within the black spot itself seems to become amorphous as the fire grows. Right? It seems as though this structure becomes huge, this huge burning pit, this labyrinth of fire. It was really interesting to watch. I thought it was a really well done scene, and the highlight was watching Pennywise dance, through the flames, and him circling the survivors and the victims like a shark through water. You don't know exactly where he is, but he's there somewhere to rise up and take a new a fresh bite out of someone. So I thought that the threat of the fire and the threat of the racists and the threat of Pennywise really established a very large sequence in this show that I thought was done pretty well, and it's topped by the death of Rich, who was a real standout character for the show, and that scene between he and Marge definitely worked on my wife. I have been hesitant about the characters, the children characters on the show, because I felt as though they have failed to really make them pop as characters, in contrast to the original Losers Club. But Rich definitely was a standout character, and their budding love story was definitely cute. So I just sitting across from my wife, I know that definitely worked, and I know that just looking at the reactions on the internet, it seems that was pretty effective, as well, with the memes of Rich, actually from the next episode, would not be as prevalent if this sequence had not happened. So the fire in the black spot, which takes up the bulk of this episode, pulled from the original text from the book, I thought was rendered well. Again, I'm going to go back to the very same complaints that I have over and over again, that the use of special effects can be a detriment to the show. Some of the bullets and the headshots just did not look good, and that takes me out. And there's also the ghosts that Dick is seeing in the fire as well. That's an added level of chaos and fear. So that was also really well done. Okay, then we get something that is less effective for me, which is the Bob Gray component. which we knew was coming. And this was seeded in It Chapter 2. All right, so this is just taking the seed and watering it and watching it grow. And I'm actually going to get back to this after my review of episode 8 later on this episode. But this was not something I wanted. It was not something I was looking forward to. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense from a character standpoint. Ingrid's shifting belief, disbelief, understanding, lack of understanding of the relationship between it and her father doesn't seem consistent. And I know that you could make the argument that she's, mentally unwell due to the loss of her father and the belief that she has poured into the fact that she, her father being alive. She built this dream and this belief on very rickety ground. So I can understand that. It just, I don't think that this was the most effective part of the show. With that being said, I think Madeline Stowe does a great job. And the scene itself where Pennywise is taunting Ingrid, I think is really well done. I mean, it's anytime you get, despite any issue that I have with the show, anytime you get Bill Skarsgård, portraying this character and letting him cook, you're going to have a good time. You're going to see a real electric, plugged in performance that is hard to look away from. His Pennywise is phenomenal. Even if I don't like the context surrounding it, that performance is worth watching the show. And from a visual standpoint, watching these two clowns interact with each other in the woods as fire burns behind them, it's a great visual. It really, really is. So I don't like that relationship. I don't like that backstory, but the performance, it was really, really well done. And then the military stuff, I've already talked about the military stuff. I don't need to get into it. And DM, talked about it at the top of the show in the letter. It's stupid. It's a glaring misfire of a plot contrivance within this show that gives a lot of external plot motivation into this story that I think to be very weak, very laughable. It's one of those things that I'm going to do to the military plot what the magic of it does to anyone who leaves town, which is just make you forget. So as far as I know, this never really happened. And then the episode concludes with Will, right? Yeah, Will. I was going to say Mike, but it wasn't Mike. But Will, on the phone, and that's a great scene. That anytime you get the threat within your house, it's effective, and especially as this is a child, and this should be home base. He should be safe. Those are the rules of childhood, right? Home base, you are safe. He is not safe here. And there's that little clown on the refrigerator. That's a nice little tip to what's about to happen. But just seeing him perched behind him is really, really horrifying. So that was really, real well done. And we also in this episode get the visual of Pennywise sleeping in this bed of blood and body parts that was a real strong visual, and just the way that his eyes open and he starts looking around once the pillar is destroyed was pretty funny and interesting, knowing that he can get out now. So that was a great image, and just the image that we get of Pennywise from this point forward, where he's just blood soaked up to his above his mouth. just really cool looking. And I'm going to get into the next episode some things that I liked about new images and new visuals that we had not seen before that contributed to the overall palette of this story that I appreciated. And that began with this episode with this new visual of Pennywise. This, even though it's just really just a blood-soaked version of the version that we have already seen, it's still a visual that we had not seen before, and I thought that it was really well done. And then we get the Easter egg in there when there's a Stephen King Easter egg when the mob outside of the black spot is saying, "Give us what we want and we'll go away," which it could just be coincidental, but I like to believe that it's a shout out to Andre Lenoge and Storm of the Century. That was one of his many refrains from that miniseries, which if you haven't listened to, I have a review of Storm of the Century. I had a fun time rewatching that movie, so feel free to go back and watch Storm of the Century, because I think that's a well done miniseries, and it's a fun episode to listen to. Okay, so then we have episode 8. Under a dense fog, Pennywise kills the school principal and hypnotizes the children, leading them away as Ronnie, Lily, and Marge pursue him. Leroy seeks Halloran's help, and with Rose's tea, they silence the voices and track Lily's dagger. Pennywise separates Marge after sensing her future son Richie Tozier will be involved in his death. Halloran freezes the entity long enough to free Will and the other children, but Shaw and the military intervene, killing Taniel and detaining the adults. Pennywise kills Shaw and pursues the children as they try to restore the cage, while the adults subdue the soldiers and shoot Pennywise, slowing him until Rich's spirit helps place the dagger that imprisons him. Marge explains to Lily that the entity experiences time differently and may be acting to avoid its own future death. After Rich's funeral, Ronnie and Will share a kiss before she leaves Derry with Hank. Halloran leaves to work as a hotel chef. Charlotte and honorably discharged Leroy remain in Derry, and Ingrid is institutionalized. 26 years later, Ingrid witnesses Elfrida Marsh's suicide and meets her daughter, Beverly. So, let me talk about some things here. So, I'm going to talk about some things that I liked, and what I didn't like, and then just the larger thoughts of what might have been effective on the show. So, I liked the scene, the psychic showdown between Dick, Halloran, and Pennywise. I thought it was really interesting to see Dick use the Shinnin to be able to trap momentarily Pennywise in a mental state in which Pennywise for a second believed he was actually Bob Gray. That was actually funny, where Pennywise is actually questioning whether or not he's human. Again, anytime you can watch Skarsgård play this character, he seems to have so much fun with it, and he just chews it up. And so that was that. I thought that was good. That was a good scene, and it shows Dick being able to use his powers, his famous powers, and be able to use them against the clown. So being able to just, if you stand back and as a fan look at The Shining versus the Deadlights, that's a cool concept. The Shining versus the Deadlights, guys. That's we got to see two Stephen King elements go head to head, and for a second there, Dick was able to hold his own. So I thought that was just purely from a fan standpoint. I soaked it up and I appreciated it. And I thought that the way that they handled it and demonstrated those powers visually was well done. And like I said just a little while ago when talking about episode 7, getting new images that we had not seen before, I thought that was really appreciated. So we got some really creepy imagery in this episode. So we had the principal marionette the way that Pennywise was using him as a puppet, very similar to a sequence in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So it's a nice, I don't know if that's a purposeful shout out to another horror clown movie, but it was definitely a creepy image. The one that really stood out to me was um, Pennywise blowing the tuba while leading the kids like the Pied Piper through the mist and the snow. It just turned the entire show in from a horror story set in a recognizable reality into a fairy tale, a very creepy fairy tale, which has its, which there are strong elements of in the original text, especially at the end of the book when they find Pennywise's lair, which is depicted differently in the book. And any adaptation in the ABC version and in the movies, neither adaptation depicted the surreality and the fairy tale quality of the layers. So to get some fairy tale elements here was just really upsetting and unsettling and creepy in a really good way. The hollering ghosts, I mean, it really shows the curse of having the shinning, and why, even though this isn't meant to set up The Shining, this is, having this character show up is just, it's a great way to be able to pull from the Stephen King universe in a way that makes sense for this show. But it also, if you think about it, I mean, it shows just how horrible this power can be and how vulnerable Danny Torrance is. This is a full-grown man with military training who is being driven insane by the constant onslaught of these mutilated ghosts, and how horrifying that is for someone more adjusted, and then to think of what that must be like for a child. That's if you think about that I think that it, even though it isn't like I said, setting up The Shining, it really does help in its own way to reinforce the horrors of The Shining, and I think that it was well done here. Like I said, part of what I liked about the elements of this show was getting something new, and we got that. We didn't spend a lot of time in the sewers. We didn't really touch upon all of the imagery from the movie, though we did see the standpipe. Yes, we did see the house on Neibolt Street, but it did not seem preoccupied with Remember When or giving us too many member berries. And I really appreciate them giving us new visuals, new sequences, new images, and Pennywise on ice, Pennywise in the snow, Pennywise in the snowy mist. Was really captivating to me, because it was a striking visual, but also because it was something that was new, and rather than just giving us lush summer visuals, this fairy tale creature was able to change the environment, and gave us this winter scene. It was unsettling, it was creepy, and I really appreciated that. And just the way he was running slowly through the mist. It was, again, the word is creepy, as was the bird of prey Pennywise, which harkens back to the Rodan and the great bird scene in It as well. So I thought all of that was like really good, creepy imagery. What I didn't like, the Ring of Mordor showing up in this story. I mean, everything having to do with the shard, this dagger, I couldn't stand. Again, I talked about it in a previous episode, but what works about the magic in the text is because it's about belief, right? They're able to use the slingshot not because it's a magic slingshot, but because they believe it. Eddie isn't able to hurt Pennywise because he shoots him with magic battery acid, but Eddie believes in that moment that the camphor is enough uh, to hurt the clown. It's the ritual of chud is not something that is inherently designed to hurt this entity. It's just that the kids believe that this ritual that they read about will be able to do it. It's about belief. But what the show does, it operates in a physical, tangible plot mechanism that is able to then hurt the clown. So this outer space dagger becomes basically, like I said, the Ring of Mordor with a corrupting influence on those that are trying to hold it, and everything having to do with the dagger and the shards and the beams in the sky. I thought was really awful, and I consider that connected to the military subplot as well. So that was just a messy, sloppy, not great sequence of this show. And then there's the Tozier reveal, which, as you know, if you've listened to the other episodes of me talking about this show, I am not a fan of these direct connections on the surface. This is not my preference. I think that whenever a show or a movie or a book creates a prequel story and then spends that time making the most surface level connections between this prequel story and the original text, to me it waters down the potency of the original story. I think that it strains credulity. I think that it limits variations and wonder and possibilities within a world, within conflict, within the possibilities of storytelling. I tend to very much dislike this and reject when this type of storytelling occurs. But listen, Welcome to Derry, despite my issues with episodes 1 through 6, or 1 through 7, sorry. Episode 8 did something here. So, do I like the Tozier reveal? It's just another connection that like I said, I didn't like. However, the Tozier reveal was more than just, this is the mother of Richie Tozier. And it was more than just, Marge names her kid Richie after the importance of rich in her life. It is more than that. If it was just that, I would stick with my criticisms of the show. However, in the conversation that Pennywise has with Marge, what the show does here is effectively justified its existence in a way that I don't believe that the first 7 episodes successfully did. So what it does is it recontextualizes the events of the preceding 7 episodes and the 2 prior movies with this new information that actually makes sense within the confines of the story that they are telling. So what happens here is that the story of the losers in chapter 1 and chapter 2 is really just the last link in a chain that it has been battling against for centuries. And to this show's credit, which I really want to underscore and reinforce here because I have not been so hot on this show, but to this show's credit, I think that in doing this, though I don't personally like it, right, I have to give it all of its flowers because I think that the showrunner effectively establishes the mission statement for this series and any subsequent season. For each season now to work backwards in time, but move the plot forward. I think that is a really bold and creative way to tell this story, to have Pennywise be the vehicle of our understanding from movie to show, from season to the next season, as this character, this ancient entity who experiences time differently, which is a show invention, and that's fine. Like, that's something that I'm able to actually roll with. But for Pennywise to be the vehicle of the previous season's information that we are able to carry into the next season with a new bunch of characters who I assume will be descendants, or not descendants, but the ancestors of other losers characters. I imagine that we will probably get a Marsh. I imagine that we will get a Denbro. I would not be surprised if, to see these things as we continue to move backwards throughout time. So while I don't like these types of connections, the fact that with this one conversation and then the subsequent conversation that Marge has later on about Pennywise maybe going backwards in time to try to, Terminator and Sarah Connor, any past progenitors of the lineage, therefore stopping its own death. I think that it I think that it, like I said, it gives the show its mission statement, and justifies its reason for existing as a television show. And I think that, though, again, I don't like these connections, I think that I have to give it all the credit in the world. There was an intent and a full execution of the intent. It was successful in doing so, and even having Mrs. Kirsch there at the end with Beverly, that her being there for Bev's worst time in her life makes sense. That subconsciously Bev would remember that, and would, Pennywise would pull from that when it meets her later in life. Again, I don't like the connections, but I think that the show was effective in being able to establish these are the reasons for the connections, that there actually was a reason, not just to sell us some member berries or make these connections just so it's a little bit more familiar to the movies, but actually sets up a reason to continue watching this show and gives it an internal mechanism for us to follow. So I think that was really successful. That's not something that I had expected from the show, and it's not something that I expected to be able to celebrate it as one of its strengths. So I started off the show a little surprised that I liked it in some parts, a little disappointed in other parts. For the majority of the show, I really had a bad taste in my mouth with all the military stuff and the connections and the special effects. But being able to watch Skarsgård, now being interested in seeing what they're going to be doing with this recontextualized mission statement that they have within the show, and justifying its existence as a show and as a property now. That's what I like, is that it recontextualized the events of the movie as well. I'm now interested in seeing what they do with season 2, more than I had been interested in watching episode to episode for season 1. And again, Skarsgård as Pennywise is an all-time horror character, an all-time cinematic character, not just outside of the horror genre. Just this is a living, breathing, electric performance that we are very, very lucky to get. So I'm excited to see what he is able to do as we go further back in time. Are we going to get more Bob Gray? I don't know. I hope that we're done with that. But I am excited to see the Ironworks story, the Bradley Gang massacre. I hope that we have less magic daggers, and more just people trying to live their lives, with the context that there is this magic entity that wants to eat them, in the background, and less of that plot driven, plot heavy, mechanics that this show relied on a little bit too much. I hope that they loosen up on that and be a little bit more confident in what they have. They were able to cast really good children actors. So the casting director, we have strength there. So if we continue to be able, if we're going to explore more children in the future, I would rely on the strength that we have with the casting director, and really focus on that if that's what we want to do. We have Skarsgård as Pennywise. That is an incredible performance. Let's rely on that and see the different variations that he is able to play. Let's rely less on special effects. Let's rely less on plot. Let's look to see what the next season is and build a metaphor around that story. There was a lot, I think, that they could have done with this season, especially with race being what it was. But I don't think that it was really explored in all that depth. And I think that there was a lot that could have been done that was left on the table, because so much of it had to do with a really badly executed military storyline, and a very, very cheesy dagger prison story. So I'm hoping that they lean into the possibilities and potential of what this show could be, rather than just relying on it being a plot heavy show. Those are my hopes, and that leads to an episode that I have talked about that I want to do. So I'm going to ask, and I'm going to pose this question to you one more time, and feel free to write into the stephenkingcast@yahoo.com to answer this question. So the question is this: if you are in charge of HBO programming and you can do anything that you want with the IT intellectual property, what would you have done differently with it? Welcome to Derry. The world is your oyster. Would you make this be an opportunity to kind of dark tower the Stephen King universe and start to pull in other characters, much in the way that they pulled in Dick Halloran? Would you just have it really be a big fan service event? Would you do something a little bit differently? Think about it in an upcoming episode. I would like to share some thoughts that I think that would be fun. I have a couple write-ins that I'm going to share. I'm going to share some ideas that I have, because when I talk about the possibilities that I would like to see for season 2, there are some templates from other shows that I think that they could pull from in order to really make this show something that's must see and a real reason to tune into. All right, everyone, that is all that I have for this episode, for episodes 7 and 8 of It Welcome to Derry. In the next couple weeks, there is a book horror recommendation episode that I am going to put out. I have read almost 50 books over this past year, and I do want to share some of the bigger ones that have stuck with me, in the hopes that you can share in similar experiences that I had. So that's something to look forward to. I know that other horror recommendations that I've done throughout the years have gone over very well, so I want to do that again. The Running Man is now on streaming digitally, so I am going to I'm going to watch that and put out an episode on that. There is the What If It story that or episode that I just talked about that I would like to do. And then one thing that I would like to do is start to touch upon some of the Stephen King properties and adaptations that I never had a chance to get to on the first go around, including The Institute, which has been renewed for a second season. I would like to look at that. Lisi's story, I never talked about. I watched all of Chapelwaite, and I have episodes ready to record, and no one talked about Chapelwaite. So I would actually like to return to that. So those are some three things that I would like to be able to look at. And then later this year, fingers crossed, we have the next installment of the Talisman coming out by Stephen King. So look forward to that review. And if there's anything else that you would like me to cover that I haven't done so already, please write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. All right, everyone, have a whatever you do around this time of year. I hope that it is spent with love, with your family, or if you aren't able to be with your family, with friends. And if you don't have anyone to be with, I hope that you're spending it with a good book or a favorite movie or hobby that brings you joy. Whatever it is, I hope that you find peace and happiness as you close out the year of 2025 and get to look forward to the beginning of 2026. All right, everyone. So may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I will see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.